I helped International Medical Corps establish community mental health centers in Banda Aceh after the tsunami crashed ashore, killing 138,000 souls and leaving 400,000 homeless. Although I had almost 25 years experience counseling traumatized children and families, I found a lot more to learn from these survivors, especially about the nature of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and how to heal after such a horrific experience. First and foremost, the survivors showed me that for most people, post-traumatic stress is not a disorder. Rather, it is a complex of emotions more typically found in the heart of a warrior. When any human witnesses something extremely horrific, they never feel the same way about life ever again. When someone survives horror or witnesses friends or loved ones lose life or limb, he or she develops an emotional complex of 5 emotions: stress, fear, depression, rage, and detachment. Let me talk about each of these. Stress. Survivors of trauma worry a lot. That is why counselors list PTSD as an anxiety disorder. After a horrific life event, people can get so worried and anxious that it interferes with their ability to live and love again. After the 9.1 earthquake and devastating tsunami, survivors worried catastrophe would strike again. They worried when it rained, grew distressed when the wind blew hard, and panicked every time the earth shook with an aftershock. They also worried about finding food or making a living. They stressed about their safety and were overwhelmed about the security of everyone they held dear. Fear. Tsunami victims were more than worried. They grew so fearful they grew positively paranoid. Now, most people do not like the word paranoid, as it makes them more paranoid. They prefer to think of themselves as wary, fearful, or even hypervigilant. Long after the tsunami wave subsided, survivors remained on full alert, finding it difficult to get a good night's rest. Paranoid people find it hard to trust good fortune. Depression. People who survive intense tragedy hold a darker view of life. They find it harder to enjoy things that they used to enjoy. They are less convinced that they can overcome life circumstance, readily feel hopeless, and view the world as a harsh place. Low self-esteem, hopelessness, and this stark worldview are typical of depressed people. When tsunami survivors succumbed to this depression, they often found it too hard to give or receive love. They withdrew from life, overwhelmed by hopelessness, grief, and guilt. Rage. The one emotion that helps humans survive traumatic events is rage. In the midst of tragedy, courage is found. Adrenaline surges. Many mothers and fathers found superhuman strength to rescue their children. With courage, they vowed this would not take them down. Detachment. When the tsunami hit, it was time to rescue family and run from the waves and not wonder if one had the house lights on. In the midst of the tsunami, survivors reported feeling no pain. Survivors detach. They focus primarily on survival and go numb to irrelevancies. When their life is threatened, some people dissociate and experience an out-of-body sensation, as if they are watching the tragedy happen to someone else. They stop attending to those things that are trivial, subtle, and less important, while they attend fully to the task of surviving. PTSD stands counseling on its head. Most of the time, counselors diagnose the extremes of these 5 feelings as mental illness. Someone needs to talk to a counselor if they are too stressed out, too paranoid, too depressed, too enraged, or too detached. But once someone survives a horrific life event, counselors think they are mentally ill if they do not feel anxious, wary, or sad, angry, or disconnected. It is normal for people to feel intensely if they have survived a traumatic life event, and it is abnormal if they do not. These 5 feelings are a very human response to a very dehumanizing event. In fact, if you find yourself going to war when you've never been to war before, you sure hope that the person standing next to you is a PTSD veteran. You hope your comrade at arms has a heart of a warrior. A warrior will be worried about the right things about the upcoming battle. Your comrade at arms will be adequately wary and vigilant. The warrior will have a darker view of what might become, as indeed the warrior knows war is hell. Furthermore, the seasoned veteran will have the right amount of rage to take control of the situation and do what has to be done to vanquish the enemy. Finally, the PTSD vet standing next to you will better know what to attend to and what to ignore in order to accomplish the mission. So when you're going into battle, you actually want your comrade at arms to have post-traumatic stress, to harness this passionate power for healing rather than disorder. The warrior must realize the following 5 things about healing on the warpath. First, the call to battle is the call to heal. For me, this call to arms came that Christmas when the news showed the utter devastation the tsunami left in Indonesia. I got traumatized growing up in Indonesia. When I was 9, I watched Muslims and the Indonesian armed forces declare a jihad, holy war, on all communists and communist sympathizers. Before the bloodshed stopped, almost 2 million Indonesians were killed. Stores were ransacked and burned. Schools were converted to concentration camps. I spent the next 40 years of my life learning about trauma and discovering ways to heal from such horror. When I watched the tsunami news clip, I did not need to wait for the English translation. I spoke Indonesian. And I knew a lot about treating traumatized children and families, so the tsunami news clips sounded the call to battle. It put me back on the warpath, this time for healing. This call to healing is the same powerful motivator that drove the Achenese people back to resettle their land as soon as the waters receded. With great intensity and fervor, the survivors began to rebuild their homes, schools, mosques, and communities. Intense passion can motivate courageous recovery. 2. Acts of love, not war. Warriors need to learn that most of the time they only feel like they are at war. At home, most acts are acts of love, not acts of war. Though warrior feelings are strong and feel so true, the feelings do not necessarily lead to acts of love. Warriors learn that they may feel like a warrior, but they mostly act like a lover or friend. For most warriors, this means taming the heart by regulating the 5 emotions, softening and self-soothing. While on the warpath, the 5 feelings seem overwhelming. Too much stress, too jumpy, and too paranoid, too depressed, too mad, too numb. But as the warrior heals, the warrior learns to be lovingly concerned, realistically wary, deeply saddened, righteously indignant, and still connected even when feeling far away from others. Some will only be able to learn to own and regulate such emotion through a course of counseling or medication. Third, you need to know your triggers. The warrior can learn to recognize exactly what triggers the warpath. Most triggers will be a lot like the horror experience or the traumatic event. After the tsunami, very few Achenese found much joy watching waves on the beach, as waves were triggers. Storms and aftershocks triggered feelings that the world was ending. Counselors, friends, and family can help survivors identify and relive these triggering life events in a safe and healthy way. So the triggers trigger healing, not further trauma or horror. Fourth, knowing the warpath and how long it lasts. The warpath teaches us that trauma is not endless. By studying our experience of this intense emotional reaction, survivors get to know how long their own PTSD reaction will last. When they find themselves in a full-blown post-traumatic stress reaction, that is, when they find themselves on the warpath again, they can discover that the warpath has a set duration. For most, the full-blown emotional reaction lasts less than 2 weeks. After counseling and the passage of time, the warpath can last shorter than 4 days. It helps to simply know it is not endless. Fifth, you have to know the warpath and when will it end. As we learn how long our reactions last, we learn that each re-experience has a definite beginning, middle, and end. Each time tsunami survivors talked to other survivors, their story had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It helped these survivors recover to tell and retell these stories. Likewise, every counseling session has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Each time the tsunami survivors rebuilt a building, a school, a mosque, a soccer field, or banded together to perform an Achenese dance, each of these experiences had a new beginning, a middle, and an end. So, healing for warriors comes from hearing the call to battle, knowing the warrior heart, learning how to come off the warpath to love again, and finding the end to horrified emotion through acts of life that have a beginning, a middle, and an end.